So much of what God asks of us in life is for our joy and also for our stretching and growth. Making covenants blesses us, but also challenges us to go beyond our natural man. Having children comes with so much reward, but also wears you to the bone. Today, we are talking about marriage, the ups, the downs, and the magic, all of which refine you and have the potential to bring you closer to and more like Jesus Christ. Welcome to Measure of Her Creation. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Measure of Her Creation. Today I have my favorite guest of all time, my husband, Gregory Hutchins. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
And just to start out, I want to give some context as to where we are in our marriage right now, because I think we're in kind of like a stressful time in our lives. So he is doing his MBA at BYU right now, full time. I work part-time as a therapist. Now I have this podcast. We have an almost 1-year-old, and he's also searching for a job for when he graduates.
Currently unemployed.
So it's kind of a stressful time to have him be unemployed and just trying to figure out what our next steps are. Are we going to move across the country? Where are we going to live? You know, all of these question marks are coming up right now. So it's a stressful time to navigate, not only individually, but as a married couple, for sure. We thought that it could be fun to talk about the lessons that we have learned in marriage. We just hit 7 years of marriage.
The big 7-0. There's a decimal point.
Actually, throughout our marriage, Greg has always said that we've been married longer than we have. It's like at 2 years, he's like, oh, it's been 14 years. So
it's been about 21?
Yeah. So we hit 7. That's really where we're at. And they say that there's a 7-year itch. Apparently, when you hit 7 years, the magic fades and things get a little bit harder. So we wanted to talk about where we're at in the 7-year itch and how we navigate that and kind of our strengths and weaknesses and what we've learned through this time and what we hope to continue to work on and improve in our marriage as we go along. 7 years down, many, many years to go.
Exactly.
So the first lesson that I thought of when I thought about the changes that I had to make to be successful in our marriage is realizing that you process differently than I process.
Very differently. We're like complete opposites in how we process things.
Yeah, and I think that was a really hard thing for me to realize. I think I came in a little bit with like a superiority complex. Like my way was definitely the better way. And my way of processing is I talk out loud. I process in the moment. I really just want to like speak all my feelings, even if they're not fully thought through. And that's kind of my way. And I thought, okay, that's like the emotionally mature way to do it.
Which it may be.
Maybe. I don't know. Sometimes I still wish you processed the way I processed or I process, but
yeah, I'm different. I need time to process things. I like to fully bake and fully process things before talking about it. And so I need time to myself.
Yeah, which is just not a natural thing to give you.
Yeah. And
so I think early in our marriage, I found that when you were having a hard time, I would kind of like pester you. I'd come at you and say, okay, let's talk about this. Like, let's dig deep.
And tell me how you feel about this. What are you thinking about it? And my answer would always be like, I don't know. I haven't thought about it yet.
And how's your heart? That's like my favorite question, and Greg's
my least favorite question ever.
Favorite question. So I think that learning that it took me a moment to accept that that was an acceptable way to process because it was just so rejecting to me. That's like kind of how I took it, was like, you didn't want to process with me. You like didn't want to make it a part of our marriage. You wanted to just like run away. And so that was like something that I had to accept as it's okay to be different.
Tell me a little bit about that process, because obviously the me processing on my own was something that was painful for you. You felt rejected from it. So how did you overcome that feeling of rejection to be able to come to a place where you could actually give me space? Because you have, because that's been a drastic change in the 7 years of our marriage. And now you're like amazing at giving me time and space to process things and then to come back to you in my own time, because I do. It just takes me time, but come back to you and share how I'm feeling.
Well, I don't think it still comes that naturally. I think even this week, there have been moments where I like really have the urge to push you and just say like, just tell me how you feel. And sometimes I still do.
Sometimes.
But I think that like I have to kind of give myself a pep talk a little bit, like consciously choose trust. That if you don't process with me now, you will process with me later. And that's like a gift of trust I'm trying to give you. And I think this is common in marriage a lot. The cat and mouse scenario, like one is the pursuer and one is the avoider. Like that kind of sounds negative, but one more likes to process on their own and one likes to kind of pursue. And the cat, the pursuer, often feels this like dysregulation. Like if we don't resolve this now, or if we don't like talk about it now, it will never get talked about. And like I'll never get this need filled. I think that's like really the root of it for me, is like I have this high need to connect, and if I don't connect now, then I'll never get it.
Yeah.
And
it's like a connection through words and like through processing.
Through
right?
emotion.
And so it's a different type of connection that you're seeking, and one that I don't necessarily seek as in the same way.
Right. And so I think that as the cat, as the pursuer, I've had to accept that if I step back a little bit and allow you time, that you will come and pursue me, like come back to have the conversation. But that's also something you have to consciously choose.
I was going to say that's also something that I've learned, and I think I do better now than I did early in our marriage, is recognizing that sharing piece is really important for you and to feeling connected to me. And so making sure that I, like in my mind, I have to think about it and make the decision to come and tell you, because I know that that's important to you. And so making you a part of that process is something that I've also learned.
Yeah, that doesn't come naturally necessarily, because you can find resolve in yourself and then like move forward. And you don't necessarily know that I'm like hanging in the abyss waiting for the resolve.
I do now.
Now you do.
I know that you're hanging there. So.
Yeah, so I think that is like an ongoing thing that we practice, but I think that contributes to how you want to work on and listen to me when I'm having a hard time, and then vice versa, how I respond to you when you're having a hard time.
Yeah. Great. What's the second one?
The second lesson is to get good at conflict.
Love it. Okay. So this one is my lesson that I'm going to share a little bit about. So early in our marriage with conflict, it was the second week that we were married. And I had read some article about some family where the dad made his kids like build their own cell phones, computers, car in order to use it. And I was like, this is a great idea. Michaela, we should do this. And
like from scratch.
Scratch. It's great.
Like we're going to get all the parts for a car and build the car out.
And the thing is, neither of us are handy, and neither of us can do an oil change on our car. And so making our kids do that, obviously not a great idea looking back in hindsight, but I thought it was a great idea. And Michaela didn't. And so it's like not that big of a deal. But in the moment, the degree of conflict in our relationship was just like increased exponentially. And it is like the end of our marriage in Michaela's mind more than in my mind.
Well, I had like fear struck. Like,
Yeah.
can I parent with this man? Like, is this his
She was like,
idea?
who did I marry? Like, we're done. Like, I can't do this. This guy's crazy. And the degree of conflict, like, we were not good at conflict. And so there's a lot of conflict because of that conversation. And we both went to church, like, fuming and angry at each other because we had this big conflict. And, like, looking back, it's not a huge deal. And we got over it. But in the moment, it was. And I think that was hard, especially for the first few years of marriage, was trying to think about,
especially the first year.
But like getting better at conflict is really important. We've both changed in how we handle conflict. I think that I've had to change a little bit more because I come from a background in a family where we're pretty sarcastic. We like arguing with each other. And Michaela comes from a background, like she's a peacemaker. And so she doesn't like conflict at all. And that's probably more Christ-like than me and how I love arguing and love conflict. But I think there's like two key changes that we've made in how we disagree about things. So one is what I will now call the throw pillow principle, that conflict and arguing is okay with the small, unimportant disagreements. So Michaela and her family love throw pillows, and they put throw pillows on everything. And I think throw pillows are one of the worst inventions ever. Like, they make no sense. They're there, and they're literally called throw pillows because you throw them off of whatever surface you put them on. They don't make sense. And so we've had lots of fun arguments, and Michaela engaged in that argument doesn't affect our marriage, but that's because it's small and unimportant.
Right.
And I think it's within a marriage, we need to recognize when an argument is small and unimportant. But it's also important not to argue about the big things. And I think it's important to distinguish that doesn't mean don't disagree about the big things, because there are things that we disagree on, but don't argue about them. It's not an argument. Instead, we converse and we talk about the disagreements. Like, for example, when we talk about being able to connect emotionally and allow each other to process, like, we do that differently. And for many years, we have differed on if one way is superior to the other. Still, no, the jury's still out on that one, but we disagree about it. And I think it's important that we give space to the other person to hold a conversation about it, recognizing that it is big. It's important. How we process things is critical to marriage and critical to life. And so being able not to have a heated argument about the important things, but leaving the fun arguments for silly things like throw pillows, which shouldn't exist.
I think they're so fun.
I know.
Well, and I think it's important to kind of define, like, an argument is kind of where there's more heat, where there's more maybe disdain for the other person or the other person's point of view, versus conflict just being like seeing something differently.
Yeah.
And struggling to make peace with that. And it doesn't mean that, like, conflict can be really empowering. Conflict can be really uniting if you don't argue about and create contention around the conflict, which I have a whole episode about this with peacemaking. Go listen to that one.
And I think it's important, like, one of the lessons that we learned early on, I think maybe one of the few things that I've actually taught you instead of the other way around in our marriage, is that it's actually okay and healthy to have different opinions and different views on things in life as a married couple. Like, that's okay. I think it's important that we agree on the core things, but it is really okay and is healthy within a marriage to have different tastes in movies, or to read different books, or to have different ideas about throw pillows or home decor. Like, that's okay. That's healthy. We're different people.
Yeah, I think that really scared me in the beginning because it felt like
Yeah.
if we're not aligned fully, then like how can we make a life together? Like that was the fear that came up for me, which is so interesting now. That's just totally not my perspective. But I think when it's new and you're like, is this gonna work? Is this right?
Hmm.
That kind of like fueled the fear for me. But I think now that is part of our strength is that we can talk about what's different and celebrate what's different and navigate what's different in a way that we can find ways that kind of bring both of our perspectives together and find common ground.
Yeah, I love it.
I think another point around just before we move on about conflict is that understanding each other's story behind why there's a conflict creates so much more traction in the conversation and empathy and understanding in the conversation. And I think that's something that has changed in our marriage too, is that when there is differing opinion, instead of feeling attacked by the differing opinion, we try and listen to the story, the context behind why you feel the way you feel.
Yeah, I think that is what I agree. I think that's what I meant when it's like, um, don't argue about the big things. Is don't argue about the things that are big for the other person, right? Like I can't know that something is big unless I understand your context and where you're coming from, and so I need to listen to make sure. And you can't know if things are big for me unless you listen to me and understand the context and where I'm coming from. And so I think, yes, in order to be good at conflict, you need to understand just because it's not big for you or important to you doesn't mean it's not important to the other person.
Yeah, there's like a whole childhood experience. There's a whole, insecurities that you bring into this one conflict. That's not just like, oh yeah, like how are we gonna navigate these throw pillow? No, that's a dumb example. But like, how are we gonna navigate this thing? It's not just this thing. There's so much more to it, and you have to dig into what the context that your spouse
Yeah.
has
Like
that
your context early on in our marriage when it's this man wants to raise children in an extreme, crazy way. How can I raise children with this man? Right? Like that's your context.
Mhm.
And so that's why that argument for you was so extreme
Well, my
because we were just married.
we were
You don't
just
really know
married.
someone when you're just married. And so you're now discovering this thing about me that could be who I am at the core of my being, and you don't know. And so it's a much larger argument than what it was for me.
Right. Like it was kind of like a silly thing for you, I think, but for me I was like, "Oh, I have this context that I really want to be generous with my children. Like my parents have been like so generous with me, and that's like created so much security and love for me in my life. And so you're like hardcore, we're going to make them build their car and build their computer." I
Kick
was
him out
like,
at 16.
oh my gosh, like I can't be married to someone that can't be generous because that's so important. Not just like in this very conversation, but this whole world of context behind it. So I think when we notice conflict coming up, we've started to say, okay, what's going on behind the scenes? Like what is bringing all of this to the table? Not just the surface topic, but like there's so much at the root of what we're talking about.
Yeah. And sometimes not at the root. Sometimes it's like the other person's tired or hungry. And so you need to give them an hour or two or a day or two to actually come back to the conflict and talk about it.
Yeah. Okay. So my next lesson is say what you need and don't expect mind reading. So I think that this can feel very unromantic to say, oh, I need to like specifically say, hey, I would love if you could ask me questions when I get home from work. Or I would love if you rubbed my shoulders or my back. It feels like, oh, I want my spouse to just know. I want him to just like predict or like be spontaneous and know what I need when I need it. But I think that is fuel for resentment. When you hope that someone does something and then they don't, you have an expectation that's not met, but you don't actually express it. then I think there's resentment that starts to build. And so it feels very unromantic to just like flat out say what you need. But I feel like that could solve so many problems in people's marriages. And I think like when I find resentment building on any issue in our day to day, I often find it's because there's something unsaid that I need to say so that you understand where I'm coming from or how I'm feeling.
Yeah, and it reminds me, so early in I think we were dating still, but we started reading different marriage books together. And it's interesting, in those books, it talks about, like, one of them was His Needs, Her Needs. And it talks about how men and women often, not always, but will often have different needs. And they'll have, or like the 5 love languages, right? Where men and women, again, not always, but frequently will have specific ones of those, like men are more physical touch or women are more quality time, as examples, not universal. But it's important because it shows us that we look at the world differently and we have different needs, that the other person doesn't necessarily have those needs in the same way. And so it's really hard for me to meet a need that I don't feel if I don't know, and I don't know you need it, right?
Right.
If I know you need it, then I can do my best to fill it. But if I don't know it and I don't feel it, it's just not even on my mind and I don't think about it.
Yeah, it's not always a natural language that you speak, right? Like
It's often not, right?
so
Not just
often.
sometimes. It's often not a natural language. And that's
Right.
like for everyone. It's like if you don't feel the need for a specific love language, it's often not a language that is natural for you to speak.
Well, and I think oftentimes the need that I have expressed the most is, hey, will you ask me some questions, or will you kind of like get curious about me? Like sometimes that's not something
It's
that,
either that one or to scratch your back.
yeah.
They're both pretty frequent requests.
And the scratching back is kind of like a more of a hint. I just kind of like nestle on in and hope he gets it. But yeah, I think it's like, oh, shouldn't that be natural? Shouldn't you like want to emotionally connect to me by asking questions about who I am or what I'm thinking? But that doesn't always come naturally to you, which is so funny to me because that's like, I'm a therapist. That's like literally my language I speak. And so to have to like tell you or ask you, it could feel like, oh my gosh, why doesn't he just know this? Like, why doesn't he just do this naturally? But I think instead of getting frustrated, just saying what I need has resolved that so many times where it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, like what are your thoughts about this? Or like you are willing to engage because I just like
It makes
tell
it
you.
makes it easy. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I know what you need, I can do it.
Yeah.
But I just need to know.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that flows actually very well into the next point, which is that sometimes each other's needs are really not something you want to do or like to do.
Yeah.
And so the lesson here is doing things you don't love because you love your spouse. And I think there's a difference between doing something you're uncomfortable with or maybe like feel morally wrong about versus doing something that you just dislike but is a sacrifice to do. I obviously am not going to tell you to like do something you feel uncomfortable with or morally wrong about, but I think that sacrifice is so key to love growing. And when we read His Needs, Her Needs, one of the needs in there was like domestic something about domestic help, which is something that does not come naturally to me, specifically cooking. Cooking is like my Achilles heel. It is very difficult for me to be regular about cooking and grocery shopping and meal planning. It is like the bane of my existence. But you expressed to me that that was something that actually made you feel very taken care of and safe and loved.
And loved. Yeah. And it does.
And so knowing that about you has changed my quest with cooking because it's not like a chore that I check off. I mean, it is. It totally is. But there's love behind it rather than only frustration.
Which is interesting, right? Tonight I had to stay late for class, and you had a meal planned that you were going to make. And so when I called you and let you know that I was going to be in class and that they had fed me a meal, so I didn't need dinner when I came home, your immediate reaction was, all right, I'm not making it. Like, not worth it. And so it is like, you know that it makes me feel loved. And so you do it because you know it makes me feel loved. And if it's not going to benefit me and we have leftovers that you can eat, it's
Might as well.
not important to do for you, right?
Right. But I think that has consecrated my cooking. Not necessarily that it's become any better since we've gotten married, but
It has.
oh, well, thanks. But I think it's made it more meaningful to me that I'm doing it because I love you, not because I think you could take it like, oh, like, go make me a sandwich, like the woman has to be in the kitchen. And that's like absolutely the opposite of how I feel. It's like I want to love you in the way that you hear and feel love. And if that's the way, then I want to sacrifice to help you feel that love.
And an interesting thing is I didn't know that was the way I felt loved until I was married. And so the fact that you do it, like, I recognize that I think this is something that would make me feel loved. And it is. And the fact that it's not something that necessarily comes naturally to you, but that you make the sacrifice to do it because you know it makes me feel loved, makes me feel even that much more gratitude, and it makes me feel that much more loved when you do it. And the fact that it is so important to you to sacrifice to make me feel loved in that way.
Well, and I think a sacrifice that you make very regularly that you do not like is an act of service, which is walking our dog.
I'm not a dog person, for everyone out there. I don't like dogs.
And we have a dog. We do. And we have a dog because I wanted a dog. And he's...
And who is the, how do they say, he fault? Parent of the dog, not the dog person.
We've learned that the she fault and the he fault, the default. So I am the default. When there's a choice between dog and baby, I get the baby, he gets the dog, much to his dismay.
Yep.
But that is like, again, a sacrifice that you make regularly because service means a lot to me and helps me feel loved and taken care of.
I love that. I'd do it for you, not for the dog.
Okay, what's our next lesson?
Another one, we're just going to talk about all my weaknesses early in marriage here. But another one that I was not good at early in marriage, which was listening to the big things. And I remember, so again, just a few weeks into marriage, you had a job that you hated. And you would come home, from my perspective, every night in tears about this job and the fact that you were at this job. And almost every night for, I don't know how long you had it, I don't actually remember, but it felt like a month or two that every night you came home from this job and my response to you was, dude, just quit the job. And I would say this one saying to you where I was like, look, women less often will quit a job that they're unsatisfied with. And so don't be part of a statistic. Like
that was your favorite line. Don't be part of a statistic.
Be a strong, independent woman that I know you are, and quit the job. Don't be part of a statistic. Be your own person. And that was my response to this thing that was like really hard for you. Not the best response. And something that I've since learned to improve. I think looking back, obviously, like, that's a pretty small thing, very small moment of our relationship was that job. And a few years into our marriage, we started trying to have a baby. And for 4.5 years, however long it was, we couldn't. And there was a moment relatively early on in that process after you had 2 miscarriages. We were going through different treatments that were unsuccessful. And I remember distinctly this moment where something had happened that was another negative, bad news about having a baby. And up until that point, I was still my young self where I was like, don't be part of a statistic and like be a strong woman, like you got this. And I remember we were in our kitchen of our townhome and you were crying and feeling a lot of frustration and fear and sadness about where we were in this process and about our prospects of maybe never being parents, right? And I remember you were sitting on the counter and it was later at night. And I remember thinking in my mind that it wasn't that I wanted to run away, but that I had the easy answer of, hey, things will work out. God's got our back response that I could make. And I remember deliberately deciding in that moment to just sit with you and to hold you and to tell you sometimes it's okay to cry. Sometimes that's what you need. And it's okay to feel sad. And part of that was because we had been together for years and been through some difficult things together, that we had trust built and that I knew that this sad state that you were in was not going to be your permanent state. And I knew that you were strong enough to get through it. And I knew that you trusted God, that things would work out, even if in that moment you felt sad. And that allowed me to sit there, to listen to you, and to just be there and to allow you to feel your feelings. And I think that that's something that I had to learn, but is really important. And I feel like maybe this is part of the male statistics that we don't listen super well, that we want to fix problems or that we run away from problems instead of just sitting with the person in the problems with the feelings that they have and recognizing that it's okay to have big feelings. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be mad. Like that is part of mortality. That's part of what we go through. And marriage means we go through it together.
Well, I think it's interesting what you said, that trust had built over time enough that you felt comfortable to just sit in the feelings and empathize. And then I think empathy is one of the greatest acts of trust you can give someone, because you're saying, I trust that if I don't fix you, you will figure it out.
Yeah.
I trust that if I just sit here and listen and love, that you will be okay, even if I don't like put a Band-Aid on it or make you laugh, or which is your go-to.
Yep, my coping mechanism.
And I think it goes both ways, like I think that building trust can start with empathy too. Like you practice empathy and then you see that over time that trust grows, like the ability to get through things grows, and you like see the resilience of your partner even when you don't jump in.
I think also it's more than just seeing the resilience of your partner. Like, so for all the women listening out there that are thinking like, hey, that's what my husband needs. He needs to be able to sit with me in this thing. I think the trust comes because of all the things we've talked about previously. Whereas like I process differently than Michaela, and she could have gotten angry at me and continued to get angry that I don't process in the way she wants me to. And that would have eroded trust.
Mm.
But instead, you learn to allow me to process in a different way, and that built trust. Or the sacrificing, doing things that you didn't necessarily love doing, but because you know that it made me feel loved, the fact that you made that sacrifice builds trust, right? Choosing to do things, again, it's like things that are within reason to do, but sacrificing things builds trust in your partner. And so I don't think it's enough just to say it's about me trusting that you're strong enough to get through something, but it's that I trust you as an individual, and that allows me to say, this is my natural reaction to this, but you've sacrificed in these ways and you've done things, and I kind of know you a little bit better as a person. Like I know I see your soul when I look into your eyes because we've been through things together. And so I know you. Like, I actually know you. And so I can sit with you because I know you better. And that's different, I think, than just saying, oh, you're strong enough. I knew that already. But it's a different level of trust, I think.
I love that. And that grows over time.
Yeah. And it takes time.
And it does take time. And choices, deliberate choices.
From both parties.
I always think about it like you're taking baby steps on either end to get closer and closer to each other. Like, you take a step of trust and then the other person takes a step of trust.
And it's not always one for one.
Exactly.
Right?
And that's so important.
Sometimes one person is taking like 10 or 20 of those steps forward and the other person finally then takes one.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like over time, ideally it evens out. But sometimes one person has to lead. Okay, the next one is a little bit similar. It's not listen to the big things. It's listen to the little things. So this one is finally one of my strengths.
It is
we
your
get to one
strength.
of the things I'm actually good at. So one of the examples will go back again early in marriage. So I think that's another thing that is pretty universal. Early in marriage, you set the foundation for what your marriage will be. And so a lot of things we did not do well early in marriage, but we had enough of a foundation of trust to improve on. But this is one of the things that I did well early in marriage. I remember our first Christmas together. Throughout the month of December, we had no decorations up, right? And I remember having like multiple times, you just drop little hints. It wasn't like a big conversation we had, but you would drop little hints about how you wish our apartment was more festive, more decorated. You wish we had a tree. And for me, I was like, we're poor. We don't really have money. And so we're not going to worry about it. But we had probably 2 or 3 times that you had subtly mentioned that it's something that you wish we could have. And so listen to the little things. I listened to that. And one day while you were out at work or something gone, I went and spent, I don't know, $10 on different Christmas decorations / some things that I already had that were Christmas decorations, and decorated the entire apartment and made dinner. I think it was like a steak dinner, is something that was a little nicer. They're the cheap steaks, but a steak dinner. And had a fake fire on our TV and had Christmas music playing the moment you walked in the door. And so it felt Christmassy. And they had Christmas lights all throughout the apartment, little fairy lights, and I had the lights dimmed. So it was pretty romantic. And so that was something little that to this day, when you talk about like memories from our marriage and like favorite memories, like you'll still bring that up.
That still stands out to me.
And it's something that a gift that I have. Maybe it's something that does come naturally for me.
Mm-hmm.
And like a few years ago now, maybe, you had mentioned once.
Yeah, this was like the best surprise ever because I don't think I've really ever. Yeah, it was like once.
We went to a concert that your friend was singing at, and they sang a song by the composer Eric Whitacre. And you had mentioned, and you said, when I was younger, one of my dreams was to go to an Eric Whitacre concert. And the first time I'd ever heard of that guy, first time in like 4 years of marriage that you'd ever even mentioned him. And then you never mentioned him again. And I think about a year later.
Yeah, like best
a year
surprise.
Later, so totally like out of mind. I had for a year I had been looking for Eric Whitacre concerts, and this concert came up in Cleveland, Ohio, where he was performing, and so I got us tickets and bought us flights and told her none of it. Didn't tell her where we were going, what we were doing, and
just to like keep my weekend open. I literally like didn't even know if we were going on a trip, if we were driving, like what was happening.
And so, and also it's like these little things, right? Like the Christmas one, $10-20. The Eric Whitacre one was less than $1,000 for everything, for a hotel, for airfare, for the tickets, for dinner. But we get into the car. She thinks, okay, we're going on maybe a little road trip. And I think I put in a false destination. So it was like 6 hours or something in the car. And so she's gearing up for a long road trip, and we pull up to the airport and we get out, and she doesn't know where we're going. We get through security. We go to the Cleveland, Ohio gate. And so we got this great
Like
weekend planned of a date.
Cleveland. Ooh.
Going to
I've
Cleveland,
always wanted to
Ohio.
go to Cleveland.
Yep. And so we get to Cleveland, Ohio, and that evening is the concert. And so we go out for a charcuterie board dinner, which was surprisingly
Very good.
cheap in Cleveland and was delicious and was like perfect for her. Is one of your favorite like meals. But she's still thinking, what the heck are we doing in Cleveland? And we walk into the concert hall, and you still don't know what we're doing until you see this giant poster of Eric Whitacre, and she just burst into tears. And so it's listening to the little things mentioned once or twice, but that acting on those things makes all the difference in a marriage, because you can create magical moments, right? That's like listening to the big things creates a solid marriage. Listening to the little things creates a magical marriage.
That was a good line. It's so true. I think that is one of your gifts, truly. I also think I give you a lot of fuel for your little things.
Yeah,
I mention little things all the time.
Now she does it on purpose, though.
Just a little drip, drop, drop along the way, letting you know what I like, what I need. But I think that going to another lesson, which is like actually a really sad thing for me and a weakness that I am working on and trying to own, is that strength has actually created some insecurity in me, which makes me so sad, because I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm like, I hope other people don't think like you're you're like just so perfect. I mean, I think you're pretty perfect, but
I'm not.
You're pretty romantic, and not every husband is romantic, which is okay. But I think like the fact that you are so thoughtful of the little things, like those examples, actually has brought up like this sense of comparison and even like some competition inside of me, especially when I'm hormonal, unfortunately, which, happens once a month, happens when I give birth, happens when I'm weaning from breastfeeding, like all the things, which is
all those things have happened like in the past
pretty
year.
Recently. Yeah. And so
or week.
And so I think that is really important to be aware of, that we sometimes have the nature to, instead of accept graciously or be grateful for the thoughtfulness or gestures of your spouse, it can turn into either like, oh, I'm not worthy of this love, or I haven't done enough to warrant this love or to pay back. Like it becomes like this
tit for tat.
Yeah, ledger between you, this scoreboard. And I think that takes the magic away. And like, instead of magic, romance, it can create guilt or shame or, oh, I'm just not good enough.
And I think one thing to add on that is it's not just like, obviously the listening to the little things is between us. And I don't think it's just, I do this for you, you do this for me, but it's also like gifts and talents and seeing, oh, this other person contributes this to our marriage or like does this really well. And I don't do that. I don't have that talent. I'm not good at that. And I think it's really easy to fall into that trap.
Right. And I think it even is magnified when you have kids too, because then the gift that delights your child that your spouse has can feel like, oh, I don't delight my child like that. Or like maybe my child doesn't love me the same as they love my spouse. And I think that can like really hit at like some deep insecurity and pain. And so I think that that's something to be aware of. And like, I don't necessarily have some magical lesson to say like, oh, this is what you do. I mean, I do think that gratitude is really powerful. as a antidote to comparison, because just soaking in the gratitude of your thoughtfulness, like you took me to Cleveland to see my favorite composer, like that is so beautiful. And just like soaking that in without allowing shame to overshadow is really powerful. But I also think just being aware that that can be very tempting. I think both ways. Like I think that women can feel very vulnerable at times, right? Like it takes a lot out of your body to give birth or to breastfeed or to, like take care of the kids all day, and it can feel like, oh, I'm just not like measuring up to like all that he does outside of the home or all the things that he gets recognized for. Like there's so many ways comparison and competition can like really erode a marriage. And so being aware of that and even acknowledging it out loud, I think I've been trying to just like let you know when I'm feeling that insecurity.
I also think you've asked me multiple times about like how I'm feeling in our marriage, and maybe not phrase it exactly like that, but like expressing that you feel like you contribute less in our marriage. And I think one of the important things that I've done to mitigate how you're feeling is letting you know that I'm not keeping score, right? Is like, that's really important in a marriage, is that we're a partnership. And if we keep score, then neither of us are going to be happy ever.
Well, and when you're in like this comparison headspace, it's easy to then reflect onto your spouse
That the other person's thinking the same
yeah,
thing.
that they're like, oh, well, I did all of this for them, right? Like you start to project that resentment onto them, like they're mad at you or annoyed with you, rather than like giving to you generously just out of the love of their hearts. And I think that that can really just suck the joy. And so being aware of that and acknowledging it and talking about it. And maybe in that, I have tried to ask for maybe some like words of affirmation. Like that, maybe that's a need that I have. That's like, okay, maybe I don't have like grand gestures of romance, but I do make you dinner a lot. And that's a big sacrifice.
And it's about, right, knowing that I'm not keeping score. And so that's validation for you, that it's like, I recognize what you are bringing to this marriage and I really value it. And I'm not keeping score. I don't need to, because we're both doing our best to love each other.
And I think that sometimes one spouse's contribution can be more outward. And so it's easier to acknowledge. And I think like my contribution to the marriage is often more emotional. Like I encourage emotional connection. I set aside time for that. Family dinner, like things
She's the family therapist.
things that maybe are like more behind the scenes or more like or less overt, I guess. And so it's easy to then say, oh, you contribute more, even though I do contribute as well. So maybe like the need I have is some acknowledgement, right?
Yeah. Which is something that has developed during our marriage, that's become increasingly important.
Yeah. Which is a good bonus lesson that needs do change. Like needs change over time. And that's why you have to
You can't read the other person's mind.
Speak your needs actively, because if you start your marriage and words of affirmation or gifts were like the number one, 5 years later, that might not be the case.
Yep.
And it's important to adapt as you change, because a lot of times your needs often reflect like what you aren't getting more than what you are getting. So sometimes like, yeah, you aren't getting as much of this, so that becomes like a bigger priority for you.
Love it. Anything else to add on that one? Or should we move to the final lesson?
The final lesson. Let's do it.
So the final lesson is to invest in the other, and to invest in the other person's dreams. This is something that has been really important for me throughout our marriage, is to not just to invest in you and in your dreams, but to help you understand that I want to invest in you. the moment that comes to mind is when you were debating whether or not to do a master's degree, to pursue a master's for social work, and approaching it from the mindset of you don't want to be the breadwinner. You don't want to work full time. You don't actually like making money, which doesn't make sense to me. You only like making money doing things you don't like doing. And so, but approaching it is it worth paying, like using the savings that I had brought to our marriage? Is it worth using my money at that time
quote unquote,
to pay for this degree that is not going to have a positive financial ROI? Right. That was the question.
Right.
And we had a serious conversation about it, and you were leaning towards I really don't think this is worth it. I don't think I can justify doing this degree. And I had to sit you down and stare you straight in the eyes and tell you that you are and continue to be the best investment that I can make, hands down. Telling your spouse that and believing it and actually following through on it is one of the best things I think anyone can do for their marriage. Legitimately and seriously believing that your spouse, investing in them, is the best thing you can invest in the world, is powerful, because it builds trust. It lets you know how valuable you are for me, because you are, but also it empowers you to go out and to do things that you love doing. And I think we've talked about multiple different things that potentially could cause resentment, right? And this does the exact opposite, is it builds trust and wonder and magic within marriage. And it makes marriage beautiful because you're allowing the other person to pursue their dreams and doing it together. And I think obviously there's like a realm of what's realistic, but we had the means to pay for your master's degree. And I stand by the fact that even though we still have not made the money back that we put into getting the
Have
degree,
we not?
probably, I don't know, maybe we have.
We definitely have.
Maybe. But it still is the best investment, the best place I could have put my money. And I stand by it. And I think that understanding that and really believing about your spouse is important. Like, one of the things we're doing right now, I'm not putting money into it, but you're doing this podcast. And while you do this podcast, you can't also be watching our daughter. And so I'm in an MBA full time, but I've adjusted my schedule to allow you to do therapy, but then also to allow you to do your podcast, which both together is basically a full-time job. And so I'm doing the MBA and now giving time to be the caregiver of our daughter 3 days a week so that you can spend time doing the podcast, because once again, I believe that you are the best investment that I can make. And whether that's investing in a passion project or a degree or whatever it may be, like, I sincerely believe that investing in your dreams is the best and healthiest thing that I can do for our marriage.
And I think it's a good point that it's not just a financial investment.
Right.
You invest time. And I think that it goes both ways. It's a sacrifice. It's the sacrifice that makes marriage holy. And 2 years of an MBA, huge sacrifice, moving across the country for his internship, you know,
Yeah.
or like we've done summer sales multiple times where we've had to uproot. Like we kind of have had to give and take a lot of sacrifice that is an investment in each other. And that takes like, oh, okay, like I have to kind of uproot what I thought I was going to do so I
thought my life was going to be. We
right.
have to change it because we're no longer just a me, we're an us.
Mm-hmm. I think that is like the meaning in marriage is really investing in each other's hopes and dreams, both the shared hopes and dreams and the individual hopes and dreams, because then marriage is taking you where you hope it takes you. You're making this life that is really joyful and satisfying and what you hope for, and pivoting along the way as we have experienced.
Yeah.
Well, Gregory, what have you learned about Jesus Christ through marriage?
So for marriage to work, it takes time and a commitment of self. You have to commit time and yourself for your marriage to work. Both of which, giving of yourself and giving of your time, both of which inherently require sacrifice, as we've been talking about. And this is the exact same as our relationship to Jesus Christ. In order for a relationship with Jesus Christ to be meaningful in this life, we have to give our time and we have to give ourself. And just as a marriage erodes and deteriorates and falls apart if we stop giving of our time and of ourself, so does our relationship with Jesus Christ. A relationship in marriage can be, I've used the word magical. It can be wonderful, amazing, in the most awe-inspiring meaning of those words. A relationship with Jesus Christ can literally transcend mortal experience, but only if we give our time and give ourselves consistently. And when you stop doing that, then you lose out on that magic and that wonder. And I'm not perfect at giving of my time or myself in our marriage. I'm not perfect at giving of my time and myself to Christ. And so I don't think the message is you have to be perfect at either of those. But I think that there's a lot of overlap in having a healthy and full, magical relationship with a spouse and also with God and with Jesus.
I love that. I think sacrifice is coming out as a strong theme here. And I feel like I've learned how to sacrifice in marriage, but I've also learned how to accept sacrifice from someone else in our marriage. And I think that that's a humbling experience to accept someone else's sacrifice for you on your behalf. Especially, I think about when I was early postpartum, our first week having a baby, she was in the hospital in the NICU, and I was at home, still so fresh, like, just uncomfortable in every way. And I just felt so weak. And you took care of us both, driving back and forth between the hospital and home. And I think that just felt very humbling to accept that deep of a sacrifice. I mean, and you had accepted such a deep sacrifice from me too, witnessing me give birth to our daughter. And so I think this is like such a powerful space to learn how to accept sacrifice, because that's what we're invited to do from the Savior. He's given us the ultimate sacrifice, and it's easy to reject it because we feel unworthy, or reject it because, but we haven't given enough. Like, back to my insecurities, we haven't given enough to warrant this much of a gift. But we can never make up for the sacrifice that Christ has given us. What we can do is receive it graciously and gratefully with love. And I also think that the love that you show me, even through my weaknesses, shows me how Christ feels about me and my weaknesses. And obviously, your love is not perfect. Sometimes you get frustrated with my weaknesses, but I think that I'm always amazed that you love me in my weakness. And I think about Jesus Christ. He loves me. His love surpasses my weaknesses, but not only surpasses, it encompasses my weaknesses. Like, he loves me in all of it.
on your best days and your worst days. And he's seen all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen a lot of them.
You have.
And the love is still there.
And the love is still there.
And grows because of those, seeing you in those moments.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's one of the gifts that you can give in marriage, is offering that love. We'll never have perfect love, but that's the love that we can aspire to have, is Christ's love. So thanks for joining me on this episode. Like I said, you're my favorite guest, so I appreciate you coming to chat with me.
You have my favorite podcast.